Jack Morrison, a billionaire tired of superficial relationships, decides to hide his wealth and live a simple life as a mechanic in a small town. Seeking true love, Jack encounters Emma, a school teacher with her share of heartbreak. As their bond grows, Jack finds himself torn between his hidden identity and his blossoming feelings for Emma. However, their love is put to the test when secrets are revealed, and Jack must face the consequences of his deception. In the midst of it all, betrayal and redemption collide, leaving Jack to wonder if true love can survive the truth. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Before we dive into this story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. For a year, a billionaire chose to conceal his immense fortune, testing the true nature of his girlfriend's affection. Little did he know, her family's identity would shake him to his core. The low, powerful growl of a Lamborghini Aventador pierced the crowded streets of the city like a thunderstorm on a clear day. Jack Morrison, a striking man in his mid-30s, maneuvered effortlessly through the chaos, his jaw clenched, his eyes a turbulent mix of determination and quiet despair. To the world, Jack had everything: unimaginable riches, global business empires, and a sprawling estate that could rival any royal palace. But despite all his wealth, his heart remained burdened by an emptiness no amount of money could fill: the aching void of real, unselfish love. Jack pulled up in front of his towering skyscraper, the crown jewel of his vast empire. As he stepped into the private elevator, ascending to the heights of his office, his thoughts spiraled back to the countless women who had entered his life only to exploit his fortune. How many times had he believed in love, only to have his hopes crushed under the weight of their greed? The sting of betrayal lingered in his soul, and loneliness had become his constant companion. But today, something within him stirred. He was determined to reclaim his life. Love, if it was real, had to be earned in a world stripped of fame and fortune. The elevator doors slid open and Sarah, his loyal assistant, greeted him with her usual warmth. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison. Your video conference with Tokyo is set in 15 minutes. Jack barely acknowledged her. His mind was elsewhere. "Thanks, Sarah, but before that, I need you to gather the executive team immediately. There's something I need to share." Sensing the gravity in his voice, Sarah hurried off, her pulse quickening with curiosity. Within an hour, the boardroom buzzed with tension as his trusted team gathered, each face a mix of anticipation and concern. Jack strode in, exuding his usual confidence, though there was an unmistakable intensity in his eyes. He settled at the head of the table, surveying his inner circle before speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've come to a decision that will alter the direction of our lives in this company," Jack began, his voice firm, yet laced with vulnerability. "I've decided to disappear." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs, disbelief rippling through the air. Jack raised his hand, commanding silence. "Not in the way you're thinking. I'm not abandoning the company or selling my stakes. I'm stepping away from the public eye for a while. I need to rediscover who I am, and for that, I must escape the spotlight. I need to live a life free from the chains of fame and wealth." A stunned stillness enveloped the room. Finally, Michael Carter, his sharp-minded vice president, found his voice. "But Jack, how can you possibly pull this off? You're one of the most recognizable figures in the world. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me." Jack's lips curved into a knowing smile, his eyes gleaming with an almost mischievous light. "I've thought this through. For the next year, I'll live under an alias in a quiet town. I'll work as a simple mechanic, free from the glitz and the gold. No one will know who I am. And during that time, you, Michael, will manage the business. I want to see life through the eyes of someone who has nothing but themselves to offer." His words hung heavy in the air, a mix of audacity and vulnerability. What no one in that room knew, not even Jack himself, was that his quest for truth and simplicity would lead him to an unimaginable discovery about the woman he thought he loved and the hidden power her family possessed. A test of love and identity had just begun, but the ending was beyond anything Jack could have ever foreseen. The room erupted into a chaotic symphony of voices, questions flying at Jack from every direction. His employees were in disbelief, but Jack, with an unshakable calm, answered each query one by one, carefully explaining every intricate detail of his plan. By the time the meeting concluded, a collective understanding hung in the air. Every person in that room was now committed, each sworn to secrecy, prepared to support Jack in this unprecedented journey. Later that evening, as he packed a modest suitcase with simple, unremarkable clothes, a phone call interrupted the silence. It was his best friend, Tom Sanders, the one person who had stood by his side through all the highs and lows. "Jack, are you sure about this?" It sounds like madness. Tom's voice carried both concern and disbelief. Jack let out a long, weary sigh. "I know it sounds crazy, Tom, but it's the only way. I have to find out if anyone can love me for who I am, not for my wealth or status. I can't live another day wondering if every smile, every affection is just a shadow of greed." A heavy pause followed on the other end of the line. Finally, Tom's voice broke the silence, softer now but resolute. "All right, Jack. I trust you. Whatever you need, you know I've got your back." "I need a huge favor," Jack admitted, his voice tinged with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "While I'm gone, I need you to be my eyes and ears here. Make sure everything runs smoothly. But most importantly, keep my secret safe. You can count on me, Jack." "Your secret is locked with me," Tom promised, his loyalty unshaken. Before dawn broke the next day, Jack Morrison, the billionaire known to every media outlet, got into an old, beaten-up Chevy he had bought from a second-hand dealership. His heart raced as he left behind the towering skyscrapers, the luxurious mansions, and the world of constant judgment and superficiality. As the car rattled down the highway and the city lights faded into the distance, a sense of liberation surged through him. For the first time in years, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of freedom from societal expectations, from the chains of wealth, and from the false smiles of those who only wanted what his fortune could offer. He was free to be just Jack, or rather, just Jake Miller. The sun's first rays stretched across the horizon, bathing the landscape in a golden light, as Jack couldn't help but smile. This was his fresh start, a clean slate. Little did he know, this path would lead him through unimaginable trials, deep heartache, and perhaps, just perhaps, the kind of love he had always longed for. The small town of Oak Ridge seemed like something out of a forgotten time, as if plucked from a nostalgic memory. Quaint little homes lined the streets, each with perfectly tended gardens, and the town square boasted a century-old fountain that trickled peacefully, its presence the heartbeat of the community. Life here moved at a gentle pace. Neighbors waved as they passed by, children played in the streets, and everyone knew everyone's name. It was here that Jack, now reinvented as Jake Miller, chose to start anew. His business acumen and talent with numbers quickly secured him a position as an assistant in the town's local mechanic shop, owned by a weathered but kind man named Old Bill. From the start, Jake threw himself into the work. The grease, the tools, the manual labor, it was all foreign to him, yet oddly satisfying. Each day, he found himself learning more about not only the trade but about a way of life that was so different from the one he had left behind. Old Bill, with his wrinkled face and ever-present smile, was quick to notice Jake's dedication. "Kid, you've got a knack for this," Bill said one afternoon as Jake wiped a mix of sweat and grime from his brow. "Keep this up, and you'll be the best damn mechanic in Oak Ridge." For the first time in his life, Jake felt a sense of pride that didn't stem from wealth or power. Every small achievement felt earned, each compliment genuine. Here, in the simplicity of hard work and honest living, Jake found a peace he hadn't known he needed. It was during his third month in Oak Ridge when everything changed. It was late, and Jake was locking up the shop when an old, battered pickup truck sputtered to a stop right in front of him, smoke billowing from under the hood. From the driver's seat emerged a woman who instantly took his breath away. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her green eyes shimmered with a mix of frustration and determination. She wore faded jeans and a plaid shirt, but to Jake, she looked more stunning than anyone he had encountered in the high-fashion world of the elite. "Hey there," she called out, approaching him with a slight smile despite her obvious frustration. "I know you're closing up, but my truck picked the perfect moment to die on me. Any chance you could help a girl out?" Jake nodded, trying to keep his composure. "Of course. Let's take a look." As he popped the hood and began working on the engine, he found himself caught up in easy conversation with her. Her name was Emma Thompson, and she was the new elementary school teacher in town. She had recently moved to Oak Ridge, seeking a fresh start after a painful breakup in the city. Sometimes, Emma said softly, leaning against the truck as she watched him work, "I think true love only exists in fairy tales." There was a sadness in her voice that resonated deeply with Jake, a sorrow he knew all too well. As the night grew darker and the engine finally roared back to life, Jake realized that he hadn't just fixed a truck. He had found something far more precious, a kindred spirit who, like him, was searching for something real. As Jake gazed at Emma, a profound connection stirred in his chest, catching him off guard. "Maybe we just need to believe a little more," he said softly, surprising himself with the quiet hope that tinged his words. At that moment, something unspoken passed between them, something that hinted at the possibilities neither of them had dared to consider. That night, long after fixing Emma's truck, Jake found himself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts swirling with images of her green eyes and warm, disarming smile. For the first time since he had arrived in Oak Ridge, he felt a pull, a reason to stay beyond the escape from his old life. Maybe, just maybe, this small town had something or someone that could fill the space in his heart. In the days that followed, Jake found himself creating every excuse imaginable to see Emma again. He would stop by the school, feigning concern over her truck, or simply find reasons to pass by in hopes of catching a glimpse of her. Each encounter left him a little more breathless, his heart racing with emotions he hadn't felt in years. Emma, too, was captivated by this quiet, strong mechanic whose hand seemed far too gentle for the rough world of a repair shop. She couldn't quite place it, but there was something about him, a depth and quiet intelligence that didn't seem to fit the small-town life he now led. The turning point came one evening at the annual Oak Ridge Fair. The air was filled with the nostalgic scent of cotton candy and fried food, and the colorful lights danced across the faces of the townspeople as they laughed and chatted. It was there, amidst the lively atmosphere, that Jake nervously invited Emma for a walk, his pulse quickening as she accepted. "You know," Emma said, her voice soft as they strolled through the fairgrounds, "when I first moved here, I thought this town would be dull, just a quiet place to forget my past. But now, I don't know, there's something about this place that feels magical." Jake glanced at her, his gaze drawn to the warmth in her eyes, as if the rest of the world had faded into a distant blur. "Maybe the magic isn't in the place," he replied gently, "but in the people we meet there." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Their eyes met, and in that shared moment, the world around them seemed to stop. The fair, the noise, the lights, all of it dissolved, leaving only the two of them standing beneath the stars. Slowly, almost instinctively, they leaned closer, as if guided by something far stronger than attraction. Their lips met in a kiss, soft, hesitant at first, but filled with a tenderness that made both of their hearts soar. When they finally pulled apart, they knew in their hearts that something had shifted. What had begun as a small spark of curiosity had grown into a burning flame, a promise of something deeper, something real. Yet beneath the glow of that magical night, a shadow loomed in Jake's heart. As much as he allowed himself to feel the joy of this newfound love, the voice of doubt gnawed at him. He had come to Oak Ridge under pretenses, hiding from his true identity, seeking a test of love's purity. Could Emma love him if she knew the truth that he was Jack Morrison, a billionaire playing the role of a humble mechanic? Or was he destined to face the same disappointment, to repeat the same painful lessons from the past? As they stood together under the blanket of stars, Emma nestled in his arms, Jake felt happiness mixed with a gnawing anxiety. He knew that the truth would have to come out eventually, that the fragile peace he had found here was temporary. But for now, he pushed those thoughts aside, choosing instead to bask in the warmth of the moment, to hold Emma close and savor the feeling of her heartbeat against his. But not all was as peaceful as it seemed. Miles away, Tom Sanders, his best friend turned foe, was plotting in the shadows. Driven by greed, jealousy, and a hunger for power, Tom discovers Jack's secret and is preparing to unleash chaos in Oak Ridge. What had started as a simple test of love was about to become a battleground of betrayal and deceit, and neither Jake nor Emma could foresee the storm that was brewing, a storm that would test the strength of their love and alter the course of their lives forever. Fate, it seemed, had more surprises in store. The truth, once revealed, would be a force neither could outrun, and when the dust settled, nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days passed in an uneasy calm. Jake threw himself into the daily grind at the mechanic shop, working with a fervor that bordered on obsessive. Each wrench he turned, each engine he repaired, served as a temporary distraction from the growing voice in his head that demanded he tell Emma the truth. But fear held him back, fear that the moment he revealed his real identity, everything would shatter. On the other side of town, Emma carried on with her teaching, but even she could sense an undercurrent of change. It felt as though the calm before a storm was hanging over them, though she couldn't pinpoint why. Meanwhile, Tom's dark plan was already taking root. Determined to expose Jake and capitalize on the situation, He hired a private investigator named Frank, a shrewd man in his mid-50s who had seen his fair share of betrayals. I want to know everything Tom ordered over the phone, where he goes, who he talks to, and especially what's going on between him and this Emma Thompson. Frank wasted no time. He slipped into Oak Ridge under the guise of a harmless tourist, blending into the fabric of the small town with ease. Armed with a camera and a well-practiced smile, he wandered the streets, taking photos and casually chatting with the locals, all while keeping a close eye on Jake. His sharp mind pieced together fragments of Jake's new life, building a puzzle that only Tom would fully understand. One afternoon, as Jake was busy under the hood of a car, Frank made his move. "Hey there," Frank called out with a friendly grin as he entered the shop, his camera swinging from his neck. "I'm working on a project about traditional trades in small towns. Would you mind if I take a few shots of the place?" Jake, unsuspecting of Frank's true intentions, nodded, wiping grease from his hands. "Sure, go ahead. I'm not sure changing oil counts as traditional, but knock yourself out." As Frank snapped a few photos, he threw out casual questions, his tone light but calculated. "So how long have you been here? Seems like a quiet, peaceful spot." "Been here for a few months," Jake replied, focusing on the car engine in front of him. "It's a great place to start fresh." Frank's interest was piqued by those words. "Start fresh, huh? You from a big city or something?" Jake stiffened, realizing he might have said too much. His hands paused, and the smile faded from his face. Something like that, he muttered. "Sorry, I need to finish this job." Frank backed off with a smile, but his curiosity was fully awakened. He had gathered enough to know Jake wasn't just some random mechanic. That night, Frank filed his report, sending Tom a detailed account of his suspicions about Jake's secretive past. Every piece of information he uncovered was like fuel for the fire Tom was building, and Tom knew he was getting closer to revealing the truth. While Frank stalked the shadows, Emma faced a different kind of challenge. That afternoon at school, one of her students, a little girl named Lily, had approached her after class, her tear-streaked face breaking Emma's heart. "Miss Emma," Lily sobbed, "my dad lost his job. He says we're going to have to move. I don't want to leave my friends." Emma knelt beside Lily, her heart swelling with empathy. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry," she said softly, pulling the girl into a warm embrace. "I know it's hard, but let me see if there's something we can do. I'll talk to the principal, okay?" That evening, Emma met with the school principal and a few key members of the community. As they discussed possible ways to support struggling families, the idea of hosting a charity fair was brought up, and Emma instantly latched onto it. "It could be a way for the whole town to come together," she suggested. "We can raise money for those in need, and maybe help families like Lily's." The group quickly got on board, agreeing to organize the event, and Emma's thoughts immediately turned to Jake. "Jake's great with his hands," she offered, her face lighting up at the idea. "Maybe he could set up a booth for quick repairs. He'd be a huge help." The plan was set in motion, and as the town came together to prepare for the fair, Emma's excitement grew. But little did she know, the fair would soon become the stage for much more than community goodwill. Unseen forces were at work, and as Tom's plot began to unravel, the tranquil days in Oak Ridge were numbered. The coming days held the potential for joy, but they were also filled with looming uncertainty. Jake's mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. Could he keep his secret hidden long enough to give him and Emma a real chance, or was the truth going to tear apart the fragile happiness they were beginning to build? With each passing moment, the stakes were growing higher, and the storm Tom was preparing threatened to sweep away everything Jake had tried to rebuild. The principal nodded enthusiastically, eyes gleaming with excitement. "That's a brilliant idea, Emma. And perhaps we could reach out to a few companies in the city for donations. They might be more than willing to help." Emma hesitated for a moment, but then offered to make some calls to people from her past life, including her father. Although their relationship had grown distant since she left the city behind to pursue her dream of teaching in Oak Ridge, she hoped he could help, or at least reconnect on better terms. That night, Emma shared her plans for the charity fair with Jake, explaining how she intended to contact a few old acquaintances. She was surprised to see a flicker of worry cross his face. His usually calm demeanor shifted. "Are you sure you want to get people from the city involved?" Jake asked cautiously, his voice betraying his unease. Emma frowned, confused by his reaction. "It's just a few calls to ask for donations. Why does it bother you so much?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she hadn't seen before. "It's just ... sometimes the past is better left behind," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Emma could feel a growing tension in the air, and she gently reached for his hand, sensing that something deeper was at play. "Jake, I feel like you're hiding something from me. What happened before you came to Oak Ridge?" Jake's pulse quickened. This was the moment he had dreaded from the beginning, the moment when everything could fall apart. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck in his throat, fear gripping him. "Emma, I..." Before he could finish, Emma's phone buzzed in her hand. Her father's name flashed across the screen. Reluctantly, she answered. "Hi, Dad." Robert's voice came through, sounding more serious than she'd ever heard him. "Emma, sweetheart, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. It's about the man you're seeing." Emma's heart skipped a beat, the weight of his words settling heavily on her chest. "What do you mean, Dad?" "He's not who he says he is, Emma. I've had someone look into him, and I have proof. I'm coming to Oak Ridge tomorrow to show you." The line went dead, leaving Emma frozen in place, her mind swirling. Slowly, she turned to face Jake, whose face was now a mask of both love and undeniable fear. His eyes, wide and desperate, searched hers, knowing the time had come. Jake, Emma's voice trembled, her heart breaking under the weight of uncertainty. "I need you to tell me the truth. All of it, right now." Jake stood there, his breath shallow. His worst nightmare was unfolding before his eyes. There was no turning back, no more hiding. With a heavy sigh, he sat down, his hands trembling slightly. "Emma, my real name is Jack Morrison. I'm not just a mechanic. I'm the CEO of Morrison Enterprises, a billionaire ... and I've been hiding that from you." Emma stared at him in disbelief, her mind racing to process the words. "You're ... what?" Jake's voice cracked with emotion as he continued. "I came here to escape the life I had, the people who only cared about my money. I wanted to see if someone could love me for who I am, without the fortune, without the fame." He paused, his eyes pleading. "I didn't mean to deceive you, Emma. I just ... I didn't expect to fall in love with you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. She had grown to care for Jake, but this revelation left her reeling. The man she had trusted had been living a lie. Everything she thought she knew about him had crumbled in an instant. "You should have told me, Jake," she whispered, her voice full of pain. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" "I was scared," Jake admitted, his voice breaking. "I've been hurt before by people who only wanted me for my wealth. I thought that if you knew who I was, everything between us would change." Emma's heart ached as she tried to reconcile the man she had fallen for with the deception that now stood between them. "And now? What do we do now, Jake? Or should I call you Jack?" Before Jake could respond, the gravity of the situation settled over them like a storm cloud. Emma's father was coming to Oak Ridge, armed with evidence of Jake's true identity, and there was no way to undo the damage. Emma rose from her seat, wiping the tears from her face. "I need time, Jake. I need to think about all of this." Jake nodded, his heart heavy. "I understand. I just want you to know ... I never meant to hurt you. I love you, Emma. That part was real." Emma's heart clenched at his words, but the pain of betrayal was too fresh. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Jake to sit in the quiet darkness, his world unraveling. Tomorrow, her father would arrive, and the truth would no longer be a secret. But the question that hung in the air was whether Emma could forgive him, or if the lies had already destroyed everything they could have had. As Jake revealed the truth behind his deception, miles away in the city, Tom sat in his office, a smug smile playing on his lips. Everything was falling into place just as he had planned. He had orchestrated this reveal, and now, with Emma's father and himself arriving in Oak Ridge, he was about to witness the downfall of his so-called friend. But what Tom didn't realize was that his actions had set off a chain of events far beyond his control. The storm brewing over Oak Ridge wasn't just about to test Jake and Emma's love, it would ripple through the lives of everyone involved. The silence in Emma's living room was suffocating, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock as Jake's confession hung in the air. Emma, standing before him, was a portrait of disbelief. Her face, pale and tear-streaked, revealed the anguish battling within her. A billionaire who pretended to be poor just to find love. Jake's words echoed in her mind, the weight of the betrayal almost too much to bear. Everything Emma finally whispered, her voice trembling, was it all a lie? Jake moved closer, his heart shattering as he reached out to take her hands, but Emma recoiled, stepping away as if his touch might burn her. "No, Emma, my feelings for you are the only real thing I've ever had. what I feel for you. It's the truth. The most genuine truth of my entire life." Emma shook her head, standing up as she desperately tried to create space between them. She needed air, distance, anything to clear the fog of hurt clouding her mind. "How can I believe you? You've been lying to me since the moment we met," she said, her voice quivering with a mix of rage and sorrow. Jake's face contorted with regret. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But you have to understand. All my life I've been surrounded by people who only saw my money. I needed to know just once if someone could love me for who I am without the fortune." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 3 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears as she looked at the man she thought she knew. "And who are you, Jake? Or should I call you Jack? Because right now I don't think I know you at all." Her voice cracked, the betrayal seeping deeper into her heart. Before Jake could respond, the sound of tires crunching on the gravel outside pierced the tension. The headlights of a car flashed through the window, and within seconds the door burst open. Standing there, out of breath and full of fury, was Robert Thompson, Emma's father, and behind him Tom, his eyes gleaming with a twisted satisfaction. Emma Roberts' booming voice filled the room as he rushed toward his daughter. "Are you all right? Has this man hurt you?" Emma, still reeling from the emotional bombshell that had just dropped, barely registered her father's words. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Tom stepped forward, his smirk widening. "We came to save you, Emma, to reveal the truth about the man who's been lying to you this whole time," he said, relishing every word. Jake's eyes met Tom's, realization dawning as anger surged through him. "Tom, what have you done?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. "What I had to do," Tom replied, his tone dripping with mockery. "Or would you rather I stood by while you played your dirty little game deceiving this poor woman?" Robert, his face flushed with anger, stepped toward Jake, his fists clenched. "How dare you manipulate my daughter like this? Do you think because you're rich, you can just toy with people's lives?" Jake opened his mouth to respond, to explain, but Emma's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough," Emma shouted, her voice shaking but strong. She looked at all 3 men, her father, Tom, and Jake, her tears mingled with a newfound resolve. "Enough. Dad and Tom, I appreciate your concern, but this is between Jake and me. I need both of you to leave." Her father's face softened, confusion and worry blending as he took a step back. "But Emma, I don't think you understand." "I do understand," Emma said, her voice wavering but firm. "I understand enough. But this is my life, my heart. I need to figure this out on my own." Tom's smirk faded, the confidence in his plan slipping as he realized things weren't going the way he'd hoped. Robert hesitated, looking from his daughter to Jake, then back again. "Emma, please." "Dad," Emma said softly, "I love you, but I need space. Please." Reluctantly, Robert gave a small nod and turned toward the door. Tom, however, lingered, his jaw tight. He had expected Emma to turn against Jake, to leave him. But this quiet defiance wasn't part of the script. "I'll be outside if you need me," Emma, Tom said with a forced smile before following Robert out, but not before shooting one last venomous look in Jake's direction. The door clicked shut, and silence filled the room once again, thicker and heavier than before. Emma turned back to Jake, who stood there, his heart on his sleeve, vulnerable in a way he had never allowed himself to be. "I'm sorry," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. "I should have told you the truth from the start. I didn't want to lose what we had." Emma wiped the tears from her cheeks, her heart still aching, but her mind clearer. "I need time, Jake. I don't know if I can just forgive this, but I need time to think." Jake nodded, his heart breaking as he realized he might have destroyed the one thing that truly mattered. "Take all the time you need. Just know that I love you, Emma. That part was never a lie." Emma said nothing more. She turned away, walking toward the door, her mind a swirling storm of emotions. As she left, Jake stood there, alone in the silence, wondering if he had lost her for good. Outside, the storm that had been brewing was far from over. Tom's actions had set things in motion that none of them could stop. And as Emma's heart struggled to find its way, the truth was about to ripple through Oak Ridge, shaking everything in its wake. With a heavy heart, Robert gave a reluctant nod. Yet Tom wasn't nearly as eager to walk away without leaving a mark. "Emma, there's something you need to hear the truth, The whole truth, Tom said with a sense of urgency, pulling an envelope from the inner pocket of his jacket. I have solid evidence that not only did he lie about who he is, but he's been secretly manipulating his company's cocks for his gain. Jake's face went pale as he took in the accusations. What are you even saying, Tom? Tom's smile twisted into something almost cruel. Oh, you didn't know. While you were busy pretending to be some humble mechanic, your stock prices have been crashing. And lucky for me, I've been buying them up at dirt cheap prices right under your nose. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Jake stumbled backward, the reality of Tom's treachery hitting him like a punch to the gut. Emma, witnessing the raw shock and disbelief etched on Jake's face, stepped in. Tom, stop. This isn't helping. Her voice, though soft, carried an authority. Dad, you should go too. I need a moment alone with Jake. Reluctantly, both men backed away, leaving the room steeped in a heavy silence, thick with tension and unspoken truths. As they stood alone, Emma turned to Jake. Her voice trembled, but she was resolute. Jake or Jack, she corrected herself, her voice faltering as she struggled to process the whirlwind of lies. I need the truth. No more deception. No more secrets. Jake nodded, the weight of his deception bearing down on him like a crushing wave. He could feel the depth of his guilt, the fear of losing her because of the choices he'd made. Over the next few agonizing hours, he unraveled everything: his hidden life as a billionaire, the loneliness that had driven him to Oak Ridge, and how against all odds, he had genuinely fallen in love with her without ever meaning to deceive her. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, his voice breaking, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. But please believe me when I say that every moment we shared, every laugh, every kiss, it was real. You are the only thing that's ever made sense in my life. I love you, Emma. And that's the one truth I can give you in all of this chaos. Emma's eyes flickered with a storm of emotions: hurt, betrayal, love, and confusion. She struggled to make sense of it all. Jake, I don't know what to believe right now. I need time. Time to figure out what's real and what's just been a lie. Jake swallowed hard, understanding her need for space, though it tore him apart. He watched as she walked out the door, the emptiness swallowing him whole. At that moment, he had never felt so alone in his life. The days that followed were a storm of conflicting emotions. The truth about Jake's real identity spread like wildfire through Oak Ridge, and the small town became sharply divided. Some saw him as nothing more than a con man, a liar who had betrayed them. Others, however, sympathized with the reasons behind his choices. To Jake's surprise, Old Bill, the grizzled barber who rarely had a kind word to say about anyone, became one of his staunchest defenders. That boy worked harder than most men I've seen, Old Bill would proclaim to anyone willing to listen. I don't give a damn if he's got $1 billion or nothing. He's a good man, and that's all that matters. Meanwhile, Emma battled her turmoil. She felt deceived, and her trust shattered into pieces. Yet every time she tried to bury her feelings, memories of Jake, of his kindness, his vulnerability would surface. She couldn't ignore the undeniable connection they shared. In a moment of sheer determination, she made a decision: she needed to learn more about the man behind the facade. With her father's hesitant help, Emma delved into Jake's, Jack Morrison's life. What she found left her both surprised and conflicted. This wasn't the cold, heartless billionaire she had feared. There were anonymous donations to orphanages, scholarships for underprivileged students, and investments in sustainable energy, all actions that painted a picture of a man far more complex, far more compassionate than she had ever imagined. And as she sat there, sifting through the evidence of his hidden generosity, Emma realized that maybe, just maybe, the man she had fallen for, the man who had stolen her heart, wasn't as much of a stranger as she thought. While Emma was piecing together the truth of Jake's character, Jake found himself wrestling with his demons. Tom's bombshell about the stock manipulation had left him reeling, his once immovable empire now standing on shaky ground. Remote from Oak Ridge, Jake fought to maintain control of his company. Yet the deeper he dived into his financial woes, the more he realized that none of it truly mattered. It was then, in a moment of clarity, that Jake experienced an epiphany. Money, power, status, none of it held any value if Emma wasn't part of his life. The weight of his empire paled in comparison to the emptiness he felt without her. And in that moment, Jake made a decision: he would no longer hide behind his wealth or his mistakes. No matter the personal cost, he would do the right thing. Determined, Jake arranged a press conference in the heart of the city. Before a sea of cameras, he laid bare the truth of his time in Oak Ridge. He confessed to the social experiment he had embarked upon, admitted to the lies he had woven, and sought forgiveness from everyone he had deceived. But more than that, Jake made a bold promise. He vowed to donate a substantial part of his fortune to establish a development fund for struggling communities, starting with Oak Ridge. I've come to learn. Jake's voice trembled slightly as he spoke to the crowd. That true wealth isn't found in bank accounts or business deals. It's in the bonds we forge, the authenticity of the connections we make, and the ways we can uplift those around us. Back in her modest Oak Ridge apartment, Emma sat glued to the television screen. Her heart swelled as she listened to his words, feeling the sincerity radiate through every sentence. Despite the lies and the hurt, she could no longer deny that the man she had fallen for, the man behind all the deception, was real. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness but of pride, as she realized how much Jake had changed. Meanwhile, Tom's carefully laid plans were beginning to unravel. Jake's public honesty had stirred a wave of sympathy that no one had anticipated, and as the news spread, his company's stocks slowly began to rise from the ashes. Tom's ambition to seize control was slipping through his fingers. His dreams of toppling Jake were fading fast, but in his desperation, Tom clung to a final dangerous card. He had unearthed something about Emma's past, a secret she had buried long ago. It was the story of how she had rejected the lavish life her father had tried to impose upon her, choosing instead the simplicity of Oak Ridge. If he couldn't win control of Jake's empire, Tom would at least ensure that he destroyed Jake's happiness. And so, with malice burning in his eyes, he contacted a group of journalists, offering them a tantalizing scoop on the woman who had captured the heart of billionaire Jack Morrison. But fate, as it so often does, had other plans. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Oak Ridge sky in hues of gold and pink, Emma wandered the familiar streets, lost in thought. Jake's words from the press conference still echoed in her mind, pulling at her heartstrings. Could she trust him again? Could she forgive the lies, the betrayal? As she grappled with these questions, her phone rang, breaking the stillness of the evening. It was Lily, the sweet little girl Emma had tutored, her voice thick with tears. "Miss Emma," the child sobbed, "my daddy, he had an accident at work. He's in the hospital." Without a second thought, Emma rushed to the small-town hospital. The scene inside was chaotic. Nurses scrambling, doctors huddled in hushed discussions. Lily's father lay on a bed, his condition critical. The attending doctor explained the dire situation. "He needs immediate surgery, but we don't have the equipment here. We have to transfer him to the city, but we're not equipped to make that transfer safely." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. Lily's desperate eyes, wide with fear, pleaded silently with her. At that moment, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She didn't hesitate as she pulled out her phone and dialed Jake's number. Far away in his family mansion, Jake had been reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had brought him here. The phone rang, and he answered immediately, his heart jumping at the sight of Emma's name. "Emma," his voice was laced with hope and fear. "I need your help," Emma said urgently. "Lily's father. He's had an accident. They can't get him the care he needs here. He needs to be transferred to the city, but there's no way to do it." Jake's mind raced. "I'll send my private medical team. They'll be there within the hour. Just hang tight." True to his word, Jake's medical helicopter arrived, whisking Lily's father to the best hospital in the city. The gratitude in Lily's eyes and the relief on her mother's face was enough to remind Emma why she had fallen in love with Jake in the first place. He wasn't just a billionaire playing a role, he was a man who cared deeply, a man willing to go to any length for the people he loved. Meanwhile, Tom's plan was set in motion, but little did he know that the wheels of destiny were already turning in a direction no one could predict. As he reveled in his malicious plot, the universe was preparing its twisted twist that would upend his scheming and leave him facing consequences he could never have imagined. "Emma, Jake, I need your help." Emma's voice cracked with urgency as she explained the situation. There was no hesitation in Jake's response. "I'm on my way. A medical helicopter will be in Oak Ridge in less than an hour." True to his word, Jake sprang into action. While they waited for the helicopter, Emma and Jake worked side by side, their hands moving in unison to stabilize Lily's father. The intensity of the moment seemed to melt away the past hurts and lies, leaving only the raw connection between them. Their eyes met in that shared crisis, and for the first time in what felt like ages, everything else faded into insignificance. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 4 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. The helicopter arrived just in time, its whirring blades cutting through the tense air as Lily's father was transferred to the city hospital. Without a second thought, Jake and Emma joined the flight, holding Lily's trembling hands as the child clung to them, desperate and afraid. Despite the chaos, they were her pillars, and in that moment, their bond felt unshakable. Meanwhile, miles away, Tom was preparing for what he thought would be his moment of victory. He had gathered the press, eager to unleash his twisted revelation about Emma's past, ready to destroy everything Jake had built. But when the journalists arrived, they found themselves caught up in a far different narrative. The news of the life-saving rescue in Oak Ridge had already begun to circulate. Images of Jake and Emma working together to save a life were flooding the airwaves, turning them into heroes in the public eye. The heroic story drowned out Tom's planned attack before he could even begin. Desperation clawed at Tom's chest as his carefully laid plan unraveled. In a frantic final attempt to reclaim control, he rushed to the hospital where Lily's father had been taken, intent on confronting Jake and Emma directly. But as he stormed into the waiting room, he was met with a face he hadn't expected to see: Robert Thompson, Emma's father, seated calmly and waiting. "What are you doing here?" Tom asked, stunned, his voice laced with disbelief. Robert's expression was a mix of pity and disdain as he looked at the man before him. "Emma called me. I'm here to support my daughter and to meet the man who truly loves her." Before Tom could respond, Jake and Emma emerged from the surgery room, their hands intertwined, their faces showing both exhaustion and relief. The operation had been a success. Tom's world, already on the verge of collapse, crumbled further as he witnessed their unity. In a surge of uncontrollable anger and frustration, he lashed out, his voice breaking in desperation. "This isn't fair. I should have it all: the company, the money, the girl." His outburst echoed through the waiting room, catching the attention of everyone present. Jake, Emma, and Robert turned toward him, their faces filled with a mixture of surprise, pity, and perhaps a bit of understanding. Jake stepped forward, his voice steady and composed, but firm. "Tom, what is it that you want? Why have you done all this?" For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The question cut through Tom's rage like a knife, and suddenly, all the bravado drained from him. His shoulders slumped as he looked down, suddenly seeming smaller, almost vulnerable. I just wanted to be like you," Jack, he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I wanted to have everything you have." Emma, who had every reason to resent him, stepped closer, her eyes softening. Despite all he had done, she spoke with a compassion that surprised even her. "Tom, what Jake has can't be bought. It's not something money can get you. It's earned through how we treat others, through kindness, love, and integrity." Her words hit Tom like a bolt of lightning, shaking him to his core. He sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. "I've ruined everything, haven't I?" he muttered, his voice thick with regret. Jake approached him, laying a hand on his former friend's shoulder. "Not everything is lost, Tom. You've made mistakes, but there's always time to change. It's never too late to make things right." At that very moment, the doctor emerged from the operating room with a wide smile. "Lily's father is going to be just fine," he announced, relief washing over the room. "The surgery was a success, and he's expected to make a full recovery." Lily, who had been waiting anxiously, ran to Emma and Jake, tears streaming down her face as she flung her arms around them. "Thank you. Thank you," she cried, her voice filled with the purest form of gratitude. "You're my angels." The scene was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. It touched everyone in the room, including Tom, who sat silently watching, a strange mix of wonder and regret swirling inside him. For the first time, he saw what he had been missing: not the wealth, not the status, but the genuine connection that comes from caring for others. Robert, standing to the side, took it all in with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. For so long, he had pushed his daughter toward a different life, a life he thought was right for her. But now, seeing the way Jake and Emma stood together, the way they radiated love and kindness, he finally understood. Stepping forward, Robert approached the couple. In a gesture of reconciliation and humility, he pulled them both into a heartfelt embrace. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Emma, I see now. I see how special what you have is. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she hugged her father tightly. Jake stood by her side, his heart full, knowing that no amount of money could ever compare to the richness of the love and support he now had in his life. Emma, with tears brimming in her eyes, wrapped her arms around her father. "Thank you, Dad. Your words mean the world to me." As the warmth of their reconciliation filled the air, Tom slowly rose to his feet, his face etched with guilt and remorse. There was no running from what he had done, and for the first time he was ready to face the consequences. "Jake, Emma," he began, his voice shaky but sincere, "I'm truly sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you both to know that I deeply regret the harm I caused." Jake and Emma exchanged a knowing glance, their unspoken connection stronger than ever. A quiet conversation passed between them through that single look before Jake finally broke the silence. "Tom," Jake said, his tone firm but compassionate, "what you did was wrong. But everyone deserves a second chance. If you truly want to change, we'll be here to help you." The offer hung in the air, surprising everyone, especially Tom. For a moment he stood speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief. I don't know what to say," Tom stammered. "Thank you." In the days that followed, the story of Oak Ridge and the events that had unfolded there spread far beyond the small town's borders. The press, initially drawn by the promise of a scandal, found something far more profound, an inspiring tale of redemption, love, and community. Jake and Emma, closer now than they had ever been, made a life-altering decision. They chose to stay in Oak Ridge, where the simplicity and authenticity of life had shown them more wealth than any fortune could offer. Together, they used Jake's resources and Emma's passion for giving back to establish a foundation dedicated to helping small communities like theirs thrive. It offered education, healthcare, and development opportunities, creating a ripple of positive change. True to his word, Tom found redemption through action. He volunteered to work at the foundation, using his financial expertise to make a genuine difference for the first time in his life. His transformation became part of the larger story of Oak Ridge, a town that had been revitalized by love and second chances. The charity fair Emma had envisioned blossomed into an annual event, attracting visitors from across the country and raising significant funds for the causes closest to their hearts. It became a symbol of hope and unity, just like the town itself. One golden afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting a soft glow over the town square, Jake and Emma strolled hand in hand, their hearts full. They paused in front of the fountain, the very spot where they had shared their first kiss. The memories of their journey, its ups and downs, its twists and turns flooded back to them. "You know," Jake said, his voice gentle as he gazed at Emma with deep affection, "I came to this town searching for someone who could love me for who I am. But I never imagined that along the way, I would end up discovering who I truly am because of someone's love." Emma's face lit up with a tender smile as she squeezed his hand. "And I never thought I'd find my true home in a small town, thanks to a billionaire pretending to be a mechanic." They shared a soft laugh, the absurdity and beauty of their story wrapping around them like a warm embrace. And then, without warning, Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Dropping to one knee, he looked up at Emma with a vulnerability and love that made her heart race. "Emma Thompson," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "would you do me the greatest honor of becoming my wife? Not as Jack Morrison the billionaire, nor as Jake the mechanic, but as the man who loves you with every part of his soul." Emma's eyes welled up with tears of joy, her heart overflowing with happiness. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As they kissed, the townspeople who had quietly gathered around the square erupted in applause and cheers. Old Bill wiped a tear from his eye. Lily and her family stood beaming with joy. Robert watched with pride, and even Tom smiled quietly from the sidelines. At that moment, under the blanket of a star-filled sky, Jake and Emma realized that the true treasure wasn't found in wealth or appearances. It was in the authenticity of love, the power of forgiveness, and the strength of a community bound by kindness. Their story, which had begun with secrets and lies, had transformed into the most beautiful truth they could have ever imagined. And as they stood together, surrounded by the people they loved, they knew they had found something far richer than they ever dreamed possible, a life built on love, trust, and the beauty of second chances. Responsibility. It was the cornerstone of Jake and Emma's journey, and their story of redemption inspired business leaders across the country to reevaluate their values. Many began redirecting their wealth toward meaningful causes, embracing the idea that true success lay not in profits but in the betterment of society. Robert Thompson, Emma's father, made the move to Oak Ridge to be closer to his daughter and grandchildren. In this new chapter of his life, he discovered a fresh sense of purpose. He became a mentor to young entrepreneurs, helping them develop their business ideas through a program established by Jake and Emma's foundation. Old Bill, though retired from his repair shop, remained a beloved figure in the town. He spent his days sharing stories with the local children, recounting how a billionaire in disguise and an idealistic teacher had transformed Oak Ridge forever. His tales of love, forgiveness, and community became part of the town's fabric, passed down like cherished folklore. 5 years after Jake and Emma's wedding, on the anniversary of their foundation, they organized a grand celebration in Oak Ridge's town square. The town was alive with color and music as people from every community touched by their work came together to celebrate. The event blossomed into a festival of gratitude and hope, a living testament to how far the town had come. That night, standing once again in the very spot where Jake had proposed, the couple addressed the crowd, their voices carrying a mix of humility and pride. "Years ago, I came to Oak Ridge thinking I was missing something," Jake began, his gaze scanning the familiar faces in the crowd. "I thought I was searching for love, but what I was looking for was a sense of belonging, a purpose that went beyond wealth." Emma took his hand, smiling as she continued, and I, thinking I had already found my purpose in teaching, realized there was an entire world of possibilities I had never considered. I found that by opening my heart, I could not only teach but inspire. In unison, they declared, "Together we discovered something far greater than ourselves. We found a community, a family, a home." As they spoke, they looked out over the crowd. There, in the front row, sat their children, William and Lily, perched on the shoulders of old Bill and Robert, their faces lit with joy and wonder. Nearby, Tom stood, smiling through his tears, his transformation as profound as the town's. Surrounding them were hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Jake and Emma's love and the foundation's work. At that moment, beneath the stars that had witnessed the first spark of their love, Jake and Emma felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a search for love had evolved into something far more meaningful, a legacy of compassion, service, and unity. They had found their true place in the world, not as individuals driven by ambition or material wealth, but as leaders of a community built on trust, kindness, and the collective good. The story of Oak Ridge, once a forgotten town, became a legend, a beacon of hope for the world. It stood as a testament to the power of love, honesty, and the courage to change. Generations to come would hear the tale of Jake and Emma, the billionaire and the teacher who showed that a person's true value lies not in their wealth but in the richness of their heart and the reeking impacts they have on others. 10 years later, Oak Ridge had flourished beyond imagination. The small town had become a global model for sustainable living and community development, drawing visitors from around the world to witness its success. Jake and Emma, now in their 40s, remained the heartbeat of the community, still as deeply involved and passionate as ever. Their twins, William and Lily, had grown into teenagers full of curiosity, kindness, and the same deep compassion that had defined their parents' lives. They were living embodiments of the values Jake and Emma had instilled not only in them but in the entire town of Oak Ridge, a community that had found its strength in love and its legacy in the lives it had changed forever. One crisp spring morning, as the warmth of the sun filtered through the trees, Jake, Emma, and their twins were gathered for breakfast on the porch of their modest but cozy home. It was a home that represented the simplicity and happiness they had chosen, far removed from the opulence of Jake's former life. As they enjoyed the peaceful moment together, William, their 12-year-old son, broke the quiet with a question that surprised everyone. "Dad," Mom William began with a seriousness beyond his years, "do you ever regret leaving your old life behind? The wealth, the fame, the city?" Jake and Emma exchanged glances, caught off guard by the unexpected question. Even Lily, William's twin sister, looked up with curious eyes, waiting for their answer. Emma was the first to respond, her voice soft but full of conviction. "Sweetheart, the life we have here with you, your sister, and our community is richer than anything money could ever buy." Jake nodded, his hand finding Emma's in a gesture of unity. "You know, kids, when I was younger, I thought success was all about money and power. I believed that the more wealth I had, the more important I was. But coming here to Oak Ridge, I realized that realized success isn't measured by those things. It's measured by the love you share and by the good you leave behind." Lily, always the practical one, tilted her head slightly and asked, "But couldn't you have both? The money and the love?" Jake chuckled, seeing so much of himself in his daughter's analytical mind. "That's a good question, Lily. The truth is, in a way, we do have both. The New Dawn Foundation has grown so much, far beyond what we ever dreamed. We're able to help thousands of people every year, but we do it in a way that keeps us grounded, connected to what truly matters. Emma leaned in with a smile, adding, "Real wealth isn't just in the numbers in a bank account. It's in moments like this, sharing a meal with your family, watching the community thrive, knowing that the work we do makes a real difference in the world." The twins sat in thoughtful silence for a moment, taking in their parents' words. Then William, with a soft smile on his face, nodded in understanding. "I get it. It's like what Grandpa Bill always says, love is the only treasure that grows when it's shared." Jake's heart swelled with pride as he nodded. "Exactly right, William. Exactly." Later that afternoon, as Jake made his way through the vibrant streets of Oak Ridge toward the New Dawn Foundation's headquarters, he couldn't help but marvel at the transformation of the town. What had once been a forgotten place was now a hub of life and energy. Small businesses thrived, the schools were filled with eager children, and the air buzzed with hope and excitement. The town had become a living testament to what a united community could achieve when driven by love and a shared purpose. When Jake arrived at the foundation, he found Tom waiting for him, a broad smile on his face. Tom had become more than just the financial director. He was Jake's trusted right-hand man and close friend, a partnership that had grown from the ashes of their past rivalry. "Jake," Tom called out, his voice filled with enthusiasm, "I've got some fantastic news. The microcredit program we started in the neighboring region is showing incredible results. Employment rates have increased by 15% in just 6 months. Jake's eyes lit up with pride and joy. The idea that had once seemed like a gamble had turned into a life-changing initiative for so many. "That's fantastic, Tom. I knew it had potential, but those numbers are even better than we expected." Tom, his face glowing with excitement, leaned in. "And it's only the beginning. If we keep this momentum, we could expand even further." Jake paused, thinking for a moment. Then, with a smile, he asked, "What do you think about expanding the program nationwide? We've seen what it can do for one region. Why not take that impact across the whole country?" Tom blinked in surprise, his excitement barely contained. "Are you serious? That would be a massive leap. But if anyone can pull it off, it's you." Jake laughed, clapping his friend on the back. "It's not just me, Tom. It's all of us. And if we've learned anything from this journey, it's that we're stronger together." As they continued discussing the future of the foundation, both men knew that the road ahead was full of possibilities. The foundation they had built wasn't just a success, it had become a beacon of hope for people all across the country. And it all began in Oak Ridge, a town that had been transformed by the power of love, responsibility, and community. And as Jake thought back to William's question that morning, he realized once more that no, he didn't regret leaving behind his old life. Because what he had found, his family, his purpose, and his place in the world was far more valuable than anything wealth or fame could ever offer. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 5 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. "I think it's time," Jake replied with quiet determination. "We've proven our model works. Just imagine the lives we could change if we expanded this across the entire country." As Jake and Tom excitedly dove into the details of their plan, Emma burst into the office, her face glowing with excitement. "Jake, Tom, you won't believe this," she said, barely able to catch her breath. "I just got off the phone. We've been nominated for the Global Social Innovation Award. They want us to present our community development model at the international conference next month." The room went silent for a moment as the news sank in. The Global Social Innovation Award was one of the highest honors in the field of philanthropy and development, recognizing projects that made a profound impact on communities worldwide. "This is incredible," Jake murmured, his mind racing, realizing the magnitude of what they had achieved. Tom, his eyes full of emotion, added, "It's not just incredible, it's the validation of everything we've been working for. This is the chance to show the world what the spirit of Oak Ridge can accomplish." The three exchanged looks, knowing they were standing on the edge of something life-changing not just for them, but for people across the globe. What had begun as a local effort was now being recognized on an international stage. In the following weeks, Oak Ridge buzzed with energy and anticipation. The entire community came together to help prepare for the presentation. Everyone wanted to contribute to the story of how their once-forgotten town had transformed into a beacon of sustainable development. Local businesses pitched in, artists and students working on creative ways to tell their stories, and even the children, inspired by the work of the foundation, made signs and drawings to showcase their pride in the song. The day of the conference arrived sooner than any of them had expected. Jake and Emma stood on stage before a packed audience of world leaders, philanthropists, and social change makers. The lights were bright, and the air was thick with anticipation. As Jake shared their story, how he had come to Oak Ridge as part of an experiment, the creation of the New Dawn Foundation, and the remarkable transformation of the town, his voice trembled with emotion. He glanced at Emma, remembering every moment that had led them to this point. What began as a search for love, Jake said, his voice thick with feeling, became something much greater. In opening ourselves up to love and authenticity, we learned that not only can we change our own lives, but we can create ripples that transform entire communities. Emma stepped forward, her passion lighting up the room. Our message to you all is simple: real change begins with compassion, with belief in the potential of every individual, and with the courage to act. You don't need great wealth to make a difference. You need a heart full of love, and the will to make a change. As the final words left Emma's lips, the room erupted into a standing ovation. The applause thundered through the hall, and when it was announced that the New Dawn Foundation had won the award, Jake and Emma felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not for themselves, but for the entire community that had made this achievement possible. Later that evening, back in Oak Ridge, the town square was filled with celebration. Lanterns lit up the night sky, and the air was filled with laughter and music. The entire community had gathered to honor the foundation's success, a symbol of what they had accomplished together. As Jake and Emma stood on stage, holding up the award for all to see, they saw in the eyes of their friends, neighbors, and family the pride and joy of a shared dream fulfilled. Old Bill, now an elder but still full of vitality, shuffled over to Jake with tears brimming in his eyes. "When you first walked into my shop all those years ago, Jake, I never would have guessed we'd be standing here today. You brought light to our little corner of the world. Thank you." Jake, overcome with emotion, pulled Bill into a tight hug. "No, Bill, thank you. This community taught me the true meaning of happiness, of success, and of what matters." The town square glowed with warmth that night, not just from the lights but from the spirit of a community that had learned the value of love, hope, and solidarity. As Jake and Emma looked around at the faces of those who had shared their journey, they knew that the award, the recognition, was only a part of the story. What mattered most was the connection they had fostered, the community they had built. Oak Ridge, once forgotten, had become a symbol of what is possible when people come together with a shared purpose. Jake and Emma's story, born from love and rooted in the belief that every life has value, would continue to inspire others to create ripples of change across the world. And as the stars sparkled overhead that night, Jake and Emma knew that their journey, though extraordinary, was just the beginning. As the celebration carried on behind them, Jake and Emma quietly slipped away, drawn to the familiar fountain where their journey had begun. The soft glow of lanterns from the square cast gentle reflections on the water, and they sat together on the edge, just as they had so many times before. "You know," Emma said softly, resting her head on Jake's shoulder, "when I think about everything we've been through, all that we've built together, I realize that what we have now is bigger than us. It's a legacy of love." Jake tightened his embrace around her, feeling the truth of her words deep in his heart. A legacy that will live on long after we're gone, in every life we've touched, in every community that we've helped grow. They gazed out toward the square, taking in the sight of their children laughing and playing with other kids from the town. Tom engaged in an animated conversation with Robert, and the townspeople celebrating more than just an award. They were celebrating the unity, the strength, and the shared belief that together, they had the power to create meaningful change. Under the stars of Oak Ridge, surrounded by the warmth of a community they had helped nurture, Jake and Emma knew that they had found something far more precious than wealth, fame, or recognition. They had discovered their true purpose, their home, and a love that had not only transformed their own lives but had sparked a movement of hope, kindness, and renewal that would ripple out for generations. The story that began with a billionaire in search of true love had evolved into a legend, one of transformation, compassion, and the unshakable belief in the power of authentic love to change the world, one heart at a time. And as they sat together by the fountain, the stars above them shimmering like promises of endless possibilities, they knew that their journey had only just begun. And that brings us to the end of this incredible journey of transformation, love, and community. Jake and Emma's story is a powerful reminder that true success isn't about wealth or fame, it's about the connections we make, the love we share, and the positive impact we leave behind. Now we want to hear from you. What have you learned from Jake and Emma's story? Comment below and share one thing you've taken away from their journey that you'll bring into your own life. Maybe it's the power of community, the importance of compassion, or the courage to pursue true purpose. Whatever it is, we'd love to know. If you like this video, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay connected and inspired by more stories just like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, real change starts with you.